Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's Pyromancer here, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how to get the new Affliction Warlock Challenge artifact appearance from the Mage Tower in patch 7.2. So I'm going to tell you guys in this guide what gear is the best, what legendaries are the best. That will certainly be a hot topic. I'm going to break down the fight and talk about the different mechanics and how you can handle them. We're going to talk about useful abilities, food, and other equipment that you can use in this fight. Keep in mind, I'm going to be telling you what the best legendaries and strategy is, but I will also cover some of the less perfect strategies, if you will. So if you're coming to this guide expecting it to be only for sacrolash, don't worry. I will talk about how to do this fight without sacrolash. Keep in mind that this fight currently is pretty gear and legendary dependent, so you got to be honest with yourself and say, am I ready for this, or is my gear ready for this? Because if it's not, quite frankly, you might have to wait a little bit longer. But anyway, guys, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Alright guys, so before we actually get started on the guide part, some of you may actually need to know where you start this. So if you're not familiar, both the North American and European realms have fully established the Mage Tower on the Broken Shore at this time. So if you go to Deliverance Point on the Broken Shore, you can actually go up to the large tower, and there's an NPC standing there called War Counselor Victoria. By speaking to her, you'll have 3 new quests that you can pick up, and with these 3 new quests, you'll be able to queue for a solo scenario that will award a special challenge appearance for your artifact weapon for all of your specs if you complete it. So before we get too much into the talents here, guys, I want to remind you of a couple things. This is meant to be a challenge, so if you're currently anywhere from the 880 to, I don't know, kind of maybe 895 realm of gear, you're very likely not going to be able to do this currently. Unless you have sacrolash, it might be possible at that eye level. However, I really wouldn't recommend you trying it until you can get a little bit higher gear. I know some people are going to be upset about this, but I'm not the one that designed it. I'm just here to make the guide on it. So again, one other thing I really want to mention is you only get 1 free attempt at 1 challenge per day. So if you go up there and it's your first time trying to do it on that Monday, and you fail it, after every try past that, you will have to spend 100 nether shards per attempt. Now remember, nether shards are the new currency that can be farmed all over the Broken Shore by killing rares, doing the world quests, so on and so forth. I think I would say if you're 900 item level plus with sacrolash, you are going to be able to do this, I would say. You're going to have to be able to meet a 600k DPS requirement in the first phase of the encounter, so keep that in mind. And then I really think the best way to do this without sacrolash is to be anywhere from 905 to 910 eye level. I think the lowest warlock I've seen do it without sacrolash was Arena at, I believe, 909. The difference in difficulty between sacrolash is quite extensive, and it also does factor into which talents you pick. So because I had sacrolash and Pillars of the Dark Portal, I'll be showing you guys exactly what setup I took for this encounter, and then I'll show you what to take if you don't have sacrolash and Pillars of the Dark Portal, which I believe to be the best 2 legendaries for this. So as you can see here on the screen, I really do think Writhe and Agony is going to be the best choice if you have sacrolash. There's a reason for this. If you have sacrolash, the longer you'll be able to kite the first boss, essentially, and I'll tell you more about him in a little bit, in the first phase, the better. Malefic Grasp loses value as soon as you have to start moving, so it makes meeting that DPS check at the start more difficult unless you're very, very skilled and manage to pull it off, perhaps with some good Whispers procs. Writhe and Agony is also very good to spread to the adds that we'll talk about. You'll see those in the video here, and they spawn in the second phase of the fight, and you actually keep kind of transitioning between the first and second phase throughout the fight. So it really holds its value throughout the entirety of this fight. I really think past that, either Contagion or Absolute Corruption will be the way to go. Contagion is decent because it's going to give you more boss damage and allow you to make those DPS checks a little bit easier. But personally, I took Absolute Corruption because 1, I wanted those adds in the boss to always be slowed, and I wouldn't have to waste globals reapplying Absolute Corruption. Also, because I have the ring, it made it a little more valuable, as that damage from the ring was stacking with Absolute Corruption. On the next tier, I personally don't really think it's a choice. Demonic Circle is going to be the best option. I'll show you in the video why that's the case. I really don't think Mortal Coil or Howl of Terror are going to suit this encounter. The level 60 talents with sacrolash, I really think Sow the Seeds is going to be the best, as it's going to allow you to spread your permanent, slow Absolute Corruption throughout the entirety of the fight. There's some adds, which again we'll talk about. That slowing is really, really important, because if you get in range of them, it's really going to hurt you a lot. Siphon Life, I think, would be the only other choice, as Soul Harvest would be pretty difficult to play with unless you don't have Sacrolash. Then perhaps running Soul Harvest would be good for making the pushes, but we'll talk about that. Burning Rush is going to be a must for both. The thing about this fight is most of the damage that you can potentially take is either going to two-shot you or one-shot you. There's not really an in-between or anything further than that. You pretty much just die or you live. The thing about this is most of the damage that you encounter is just about avoiding it and having this talent in order to get away from it, especially when the ads and the boss specifically start to speed up, even with the debuff on it for slow. You're really going to want Burning Rush for the kiting. Demon Skin's not really going to provide any value because if you get hit, it's going to hit you really hard no matter what, and Dark Pact is simply out of the question. Going down to the level 90 talents, Grimoire of Supremacy is going to be the best option here, as it's going to provide you a very far-ranged interrupt and the most damage that you're going to get out of any of these. Don't take Sacrifice, and please don't take Service. It simply will not do you any good. Interrupts are important on this fight, so make sure that you have your Spell, Lock, or Command Demon ability bound on your bar. The last one is sort of your choice, ruling out Phantom Singularity. I took Soul Conduit because I really felt that for target switching specifically, which is a big factor in this fight, the Soul Conduit was the most beneficial for me. I tried Soul Effigy a couple different times, but any time that the boss phases and becomes immune and the second target comes out, you'll have to reapply Soul Effigy, which is a wasted cast time and a couple wasted globals, I feel like. I just really feel like Soul Conduit was the best suited for having Sacrolash. Now, let's talk about if you don't have Sacrolash. And here I'm going to kind of use Yips Arena as an example. Now, the talents that he used and the talents that I recommend might differ just a little bit, but I'll explain why. Now, keep in mind Yips Arena did not have Sacrolash, which the majority of Warlocks don't. So, that being said, there's a couple things you need to keep in mind. It's going to really factor into your item level is really going to matter. Your gear and legendaries and your trinkets are all really going to matter. And I really think Writhe in Agony is still going to take the #1 spot for the first tier. I just really think no matter whether you're running Sacrolash or not, that it's going to provide the most use out of the first tier. Haunt's not even an option, don't even consider it. But Malefic Grasp can be used if you're really having trouble meeting the DPS check. The problem with that is you have to stand still for Malefic Grasp, and I just really feel like Writhe in Agony is going to be better with the kiting strategy that you're going to have to use. That being said, Contagion is not a bad option for the second tier. However, Absolute Corruption is going to allow you to focus less on spreading your dots out and making sure that you're having to reapply them. Empowered Life Tap's not even considered because you have to essentially kill yourself in order to use it. So I think Absolute Corruption still would be the best. The only thing is if you're having a really hard time making the DPS check, Contagion might be required for you. Again, Demonic Circle is going to be the way to go. And the next one is kind of up in the air. Now, I believe Yips Arena was actually using Soul Harvest, but for the sake of not knowing 100% for sure, you can actually, I feel like, take Siphon Life as well. This is going to give you a little bit more single target than Sow the Seeds would, of course. But I think, honestly, if you don't have Sacrolash, Soul Harvest is probably going to be the best one to go to. Now, Burning Rush is going to remain consistent, and so is Supremacy. You're not going to want to change those for any reason at all. But the last tier, you can switch it up. If you want to run Soul Effigy, that is absolutely something that you can do. I think this will help you make the push timing in the first phase a little bit better if you don't have Sacrolash. However, you are going to struggle a little bit more, I feel like, with the ad swapping in the second phase. So because of that, Soul Conduit and Soul Effigy are interchangeable depending on what damage you find yourself needing. Alrighty guys, so let's talk about legendaries. Of course, the #1 legendary for this fight, and some people think that this fight's not even possible without it, but we've seen that it is going to be Sacrolash. Now you can see as soon as I apply Corruption to these ads, they're not even close to being able to touching me. They do get slowed 60% permanently if I'm running Absolute Corruption, so this legendary really is invaluable. That being said, there is one other legendary that I think is super good for this type of situation, and that is actually Pillars of the Dark Portal. Now, in this short clip here, you'll see why. So say the big boss is coming towards you, and you don't want him to hit you. You can instantly portal away and save yourself from getting one shot or potentially even knocked off the edge. There's also another reason for this, and I'll show you that in the video. Now, real quick, there's a couple other things that I just wanted to mention before we get started. One of which, a tip that you won't see me do in this video, but I actually found out later on, was there's actually these summoning circles that spawn. Now, you can actually take your Doom Guard, because it's really not safe for you to go and stand in them, especially if they're in the purple stuff on the ground. you can tell your Doomguard to stand in them, effectively negating what they do. Now, this is not cheating, this is not exploiting, this is how the mechanic is meant to work. That being said, you guys, I hope you know how to use Banish, Spell Lock / Command Demon, and Demonic Gateway, as all of them are going to be essential in this fight. If you're not sure how Banish works, I'd go check it out right now on Wowhead and familiarize yourself with it, because you will be using it when you kill this boss. Alright. Now, real quick, guys, when it comes to gear and equipment that you can actually bring to this fight that will be useful, there's a couple different things you can do. Real quick, I'm going to throw on the exact gear that I used when I did this fight, just to show you exactly what I ran. Now, it wasn't even perfectly optimized. I was running a Destro necklace with Mark of the Claw on it, so not even optimized there in any way. And then actually was running Pillars of the Dark Portal. We'll take off Faramir's here as well, and not delete it. We'll actually put on this instead. I ran an Urn. And this is actually what my gear looked like. So, going back to my stats, about 20% crit, 18% haste, and then a lot of mastery. Don't really worry too much about that. That's not really the key thing. You obviously just want to make sure that you have your 4-piece. I certainly would recommend it for this, as it's a really large, substantial DPS boost. Whispers in the Dark, pardon me, is actually a really great choice for trinkets as well. And I decided to take Ethereal Urn simply because it gave me a lot of mastery and it was a pretty decent stat stick. Erratic Metronome is always an option as well, if you have that and you don't have an Urn. This is definitely not a bad trinket, I just preferred Ethereal Urn instead. Now, if you have a Faramir's, it is technically usable on the ads in the second phase, but aside from that, I certainly wouldn't recommend it if you can stay away from it. There are just simply better trinkets out there that you can go with. Now, one other thing is if you have other AF legendaries like the Power Chord of Lethtendris, or maybe you have Norganons or Reap and Sow, and you don't have Sacrolash and Pillars, you can run those trinkets, or you can run those legendaries if you have to. It's still going to be possible with them. There's plenty of Warlocks out there that are starting to do it without these legendaries. These are simply the ones that I recommend. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is food, consumables, things like that. Now, there's going to be a couple very important things. You're going to want to use Flask of the Whispered Pack for this to get the maximum amount of intellect that you can. You also want the Mastery food, as simply Mastery tends to be the best food for us. If for some reason you sim better with Haste food or something, then run that. But Nightborn Delicacy Platter is going to be the way to go in general. And then, of course, Potion of Prolonged Power. I wouldn't recommend the other one, except maybe in the first phase. Prolonged Power is really going to be better than Deadly Grace, except perhaps on single target. But I really think Prolonged Power, just because of how long it lasts, is going to be better than Deadly Grace anyway. Then the very last thing, and one of the most important things you're going to find out, is getting Drums of Fury, or Drums of the Mountain. So what these do is they're basically a personal bloodlust, and items like this were used, Drums of Rage, I believe is what they were called, were used on Canrathad for Green Fire as well. You can take these in, they're a consumable, and they give you bloodlust. So if I pop one right now, you're going to see I'm going to get a Lusty buff, and I'm going to get 25% increased spell haste. So, that being said, this is really, really good to take on this fight. I would almost say it's essential, especially if you don't have Sacrolash. It's pretty required, and this is going to help you push the DPS in certain situations. Keep in mind, though, where exactly you use this Lust buff is really going to depend on you. One other thing that I considered was perhaps the blue items that you could get through Ritual of Doom would be usable within this instance, and while you can use them, they actually don't affect you, so don't bother stockpiling those or trying to use those for this. Aside from that, guys, I think that pretty much covers the gear, everything else that I wanted to talk about, so let's jump into the fight and show you guys how this is done. Alright guys, so let's actually get into the fight. First thing is first, welcome to the arena. There's going to be a 2-target fight with some ads that spawn. Essentially, there's a guy called Karam and a guy called Rest, and you're going to be DPSing back and forth between the two of them. This fight has 3 phases and 2 intermission phases, as I like to say, and you start off by fighting Karam Mage Spear. One thing you'll notice is I put my Demonic Circle and my Gateway down. Where you place these is completely your preference. This is just where I found to be with my kiting pattern to be the best for what I like to do. One thing that I'm going to tell you right now is that you should make sure that you're fully utilizing these at any given point in the fight, especially if you have Pillars of the Dark Portal. So eventually, after all their RP, he will say, I obey, and you'll want to pre-pot and make sure that you're ready for the fight. At that point, you'll start phase 1. You start off fighting Karam Mage Spear, who will fixate you and begin acquiring a stacking debuff. As this debuff increases, his damage done and movement speed increases as well. With Sacrolash, like I have, you should never really be hit by this ability, maybe one time maximum. You can see they're going through the gateway. I let him get a little too close and ended up getting hit by it, and it does a big chunk of health. Without Sacrolash, there will be points where you must pop Unending Resolve and just tank the hit. So continue DPSing Karam, pre-pot as he's about to become hostile, kite him around the room as you can see me doing here, making use of your gateway and demonic circle. Use Burning Rush, like I just did, to gain a lead on him if necessary, because if he hits you, like I said, you'll take very high damage and be knocked back about 25 yards. The reason I wasn't knocked back is because I was in the middle of going through a portal, therefore I wasn't affected by that. If you don't have Sacrolash, you're going to have to kite him for quite a further distance than I do. See, even with Sacrolash, he's really starting to cruise a little bit and starting to catch up, so every once in a while I do decide to just let him hit me. After he hits you, he'll kind of pause there and stand for a second before he starts chasing you again, so sometimes that allows you to get a couple UAs out. That's really all there is to this first phase, is you just kiting this one target around and making sure that he doesn't hit you. Keep in mind he can be feared, but because he's dotted, the fear breaks almost instantly, so it's not really that helpful to you. So I'll have a couple suggested kind of kiting patterns, but it really just is your preference in the way that you like to kite him. There's not really any particular spots in the room that allow you to make it too particularly easy. I just like to kite him around the fountain. So like I said, just dot him, get UAs out whenever you can. Make sure you're spending those reap stacks. Don't be too conservative with them. And at 33% roughly, you'll go into Intermission 1. Now the first thing here that you'll notice is the guy in the middle of the room named reqs Mage Spear becomes active and begins casting Shadow Bolt at you. Ignore the spell and just DPS him. Put all your dots on him, of course, and periodically he will cast Tears, and a rift from the nether will open. It spawns 4 Shadowy Vestige adds, as you can see here, and 1 Shadowy Fiend. Immediately throw Agony on the large Fiend, as it has double the HP of all of the other adds and will provide the highest damage through Agony with the ramp up dot. These are slow-moving adds that melee you for substantial damage. Avoid them at all costs. Seed of Corruption these adds to spread damage to them, and throw Agony on them, of course, to get more shards. And eventually, after Karam heals up enough, he will become active and start chasing you again. This is back into Phase 2. So, keep in mind the shadowy adds from Phase 2 will continue chasing you throughout this period until they're dead. Immediately throw your dots back on a Karam and begin cleaving him and the adds down if you can. Don't forget about your Demonic Circle and Gateway in this situation, as they can definitely be life-saving. In this phase, Karam will begin summoning Demonic Hands with Grasp from Beyond. This will summon a Stagnant Hand, which you can see here. Upon completing its cast, it'll one-shot you. So what you want to do is instantly start fully dotting this ad, because it is the #1 priority. However, its cast is interruptible, so what you want to do is interrupt it only as the cast is getting close to completion, so that you get as much time DPSing it through its cast as you can. Keep in mind they can also be banished and do not cast while banished, but once banished runs out, they will continue to cast again and you're going to be in trouble. Don't hesitate to spend reap stacks to kill these, as they are the #1 priority whenever they're out. They have 6.45 million health, and if you can't seem to find them, they will appear as boss frames, so you can target them that way and send your Doomguard to interrupt them. Eventually, when Karam's HP gets back down to around 30%, he'll go back into Purgatory and you'll go into Intermission 2. Be sure to position yourself so that the shadow adds are dragged on top of reqs to make cleaving the most optimal. In this phase, reqs begins casting Rune of Summoning, which you can see right here. This spell will summon a giant void creature that has 107 million HP, but it can be avoided. If you position your pet or yourself within the rune for about 4 seconds, it will disappear and nothing will happen. If the ad spawns, it will chase you down and eventually kill you, but can be banished for 30 seconds over and over again. Having to juggle banish and doing damage in this fight is a real pain in the ass, so I really suggest you do your best to make sure that you're not spawning these. Eventually, Karam will heal himself up for the last time, and begin chasing you one last time, as it says in the dialogue. This is kind of the final stretch, and at this point, both bosses will be targetable. However, you definitely want to focus on Karam because he is the big problem of this fight. Finish off the shadow adds from the second intermission, making sure you keep the adds away from yourself, and making sure that you're always prioritizing the ones that are casting Grasp from Beyond. Make sure that as they get close to finishing their cast that you're interrupting them, and it's pretty much impossible to get all of these adds down and keep kiting without Sacrolash and not get hit by Karam. But the nice thing is Karam's health is a little bit lower. So once the adds are starting to die off, As you can kind of see here, they're starting to get a little bit lower. Karam is pretty much one of the only targets I have left. I'm going to finish off this last ad here and throw a banish on the Hand of Beyond. The reason I do this is Karam is getting low, and what actually happens is I let him hit me, I pop Unending Resolve, and what you want to do is when he starts to get low, this is where you're going to want to second pop any reap stacks that you have and pop your drums. The reason for this is Karam's actually the one that spawns the hands, so you just dump everything you have into Karam, and as soon as he's dead, any of the hands from beyond that spawn actually just despawn. You can see that here. After that, the only target that will be left is Rayast, and all he will do at this point is summon Thing of Nightmare, which is the rune that you're supposed to stand in. However, if for some reason you don't stand in it, you can just banish it and keep tunneling Rayast. Eventually, he will just fall over dead, and there you have it. You've obtained the newest artifact appearance for Affliction and completed the new challenge scenario that Blizzard implemented in patch 7.2 with the Mage Tower. I'm going to throw in a couple bloopers here because I thought it was really funny, some of the things that I did, and I think maybe you guys can enjoy some of that stuff. Just first impressions, figuring out what the hell happened to me. But anyways, guys, I hope this guide really did help you. I know that it's going to be a big difference, especially in the first phase in difficulty, if you have drums, or if you have sacrolash, or if you have pillars, specifically sacrolash. It is so good for this fight. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like Blizzard is looking to tune that in any way. So at this time, it's really going to be the best way to do it. It is possible, though, without having it. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Oh, F1's coming in, dude. See if I just one-shot it. What the fuck? I'm dead! Oh, this shit is hard as fuck! Are you kidding me?
Oh my god, you just got one shot.
There's like an interrupt mechanic, dude. Oh, fuck! Why did I run into him? Son of a bitch! Holy fuck, what is that? It has 100 million health. What is that? Oh god, what is that? Holy shit, what was that thing?